Kia ora, hello, I'm Philip Duncan. It is Wednesday, the 17th of September. Thank you for joining me. A cold blast, one of a number that are on the way over the next few weeks, is moving into New Zealand at the moment. Look at all the thunderstorms over in Westland this morning, some of them falling apart as the sun came up, but plenty of rain moving through into the South Island on the west coast, and windier weather developing over on the eastern side. Around the North Island, cloudy periods moving through, maybe an isolated shower or two, but the wet weather will be slowly moving up the western side of New Zealand over the next 24 hours. So let's have a look at the air pressure map, and you can see this ceiling of high pressure, which means all the storms down in the Southern Ocean, as they come up northwards, that's where you get these squash zones of windy weather between the highs and the lows. So windy westerlies, windy spring-like westerlies across New Zealand for Wednesday. Windiest in central parts of the country, that's the upper South Island, the very lower North Island. And many of you in the east and at the top of the country enjoying some warmer weather after the colder stuff we've just had. And you can see why. I mean, it's coming from around the Coral Sea, Queensland area, and drifting in as a windy northwesterly, but you can see the southerly change coming through here already in Tasmania. Thunderstorms and showers today, and they're going to be seeing the temperature dropping. So let's have a look at the wind gust map going into this evening, 6 o'clock. Areas in purple and the darker shading through the southern Alps and into the ranges of the lower North Island, Cook Strait area, and the Marlborough Sounds. That's where we're going to be seeing the strongest gusts going into this evening. Some of them have already started as we recorded this video. So wind gusts in that purple shading, 90, 100, 110 kilometres an hour, maybe even higher than that through some parts of the mountains around Canterbury. Then we jump forward 12 hours to tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock in the morning, and that windy weather goes further up the North Island. It doesn't really turn into a major event, but these areas in purple along the tops of the mountains and ranges and pushing out into eastern Manawatu, parts of Hawke's Bay, wide at Upper Wellington, those are the areas likely to be getting the strongest wind gusts overnight tonight and through into Thursday morning. So by the time we get to lunchtime Thursday, that windy weather sliding further up the North Island, west to northwest winds, and they'll be turning more south to southwest as we go into the later part of the day. And now that cold airflow moves in over the South Island, so we'll see snow flurries around the mountains. And if you're in Southland, not the best of time if you're in the middle of lambing and calving with those southerlies blowing through, and of course the temperature down for you. So wintry kind of stuff coming through for you, developing as we go through Thursday. And then as those winds ease and we've got a little bit of high pressure coming through for Saturday, it means frosty weather around, quite widespread as we go into Friday morning. There might be some areas where it's still a bit, cloudy and windy, so you don't get a frost, but many inland areas look frosty. And look at this into the North Island going into Saturday, frost risk coming up into Bay of Plenty, Waikato. Kiwi fruit growers will be monitoring that. Don't forget, ruralweather.co.nz has got frost information for you, and our Weather Watch app allows you to set alerts for temperatures in your part of the country under the paid subscription. So that might be useful for those of you that don't like frosty weather at this time of the year. Let's have a look at noon Friday. So there is that high I mentioned. That brings in lighter winds. That is why we're seeing the frosts, not only because of the high pressure, but look at the polar airflow right up here over Auckland and Coromandel Peninsula again. This does happen from time to time in spring, but we're getting a lot more of it this year since August. A lot more of that polar airflow coming through as storms down around Antarctica get larger, and that is allowing the colder weather to move on through. Not a huge amount of wet weather. There might be a dusting of snow though around the tops of the mountains, ranges, maybe even around the desert road as we go through Friday because of that colder southerly change that comes on in. But it really doesn't linger long. So we showed you the frost risk for the North Island on Saturday. So that polar boundary, it does slide out to the east by noon, but first thing in the morning when those frosts are more likely, that's why we are expecting frosty conditions around the North Island. And like I say, our rural weather site, the Weather Watch app, really does drill down deeper for frosts. But frosty weather not quite so likely around the South Island on Saturday. You may still have one, it depends exactly on the timing of those northwesterly winds and northerly winds, which are coming out of the north here, subtropical to some degree. The next cold blast comes into Australia, their next wintry one. Yes, that's heading our way, but between the cold blast that is moving away on Saturday and the next one that is yet to arrive, we've got this moment of warmer weather returning again. So frosty nights and then fairly mild afternoons, especially here on Saturday around the South Island as those winds ramp up. So by midnight Saturday, strong winds again in the purple, the dark shading through the mountains and the ranges of the South Island, especially around Canterbury, where those northwesterlies or northerlies even start to really pick up. And they could be quite strong around Fiordland National Park as well, with gusts over 120 kilometres an hour. As we go to noon Sunday, those windy conditions once more move up the country. So central New Zealand, most likely to be getting strong winds, but you might find them around parts of Taranaki, certainly around the Central Plateau and the lower North Island, while winds start to ease to some degree around the South Island. On the bigger picture, you can see what is going on. So the high is moving away on Sunday, allowing the subtropical airflow, hello to Fiji and Tonga, airflow coming near you, also Vanuatu and New Caledonia, hello to you as well. Northwesterly winds coming down over the North Island. So we kick off Sunday, might be a bit cold here and there, but really it's probably warmer than average in a number of places. Very windy in exposed places, as we just showed you, and more west coast rain because there is that next cold front moving on in. But this one, it's a little complicated. By that I mean it gets messy as we go into next week. So on Monday, high pressure is to the northeast of New Zealand, another weaker area of high pressure over the Tasman Sea, and a very small low pressure zone between Northland and Norfolk Island. And what that's doing is creating a convergence area where those winds meet. So you've got a line of heavy rain or showers with maybe some thunderstorms, and that could brush New Zealand, or it might just stay offshore and you've got a mostly dry day. It's going to be one of those sort of setups. So we do see a chance of some heavy downpours. Can't lock it in this far out, but that is around the North Island. The South Island, lighter winds thanks to high pressure, but the polar line still just brushing Stewart Island, Southland, and maybe even Fiordland. And yes, another surge over here in Tasmania with the next cold southerly for them. And in fact, look at this, right up to almost Queensland. So you can see that the polar airflow is loose, is what we would call it. Normally it's tightly packed around the Antarctic region. High pressure zones help guide the blue line that you see. And so sometimes high pressure can push it down. Other times this setup here, powerful high pressure zone 1036, means that all the isobars disappear off towards Antarctica. That allows that colder airflow to be dredged right up into New South Wales. And what that means for us is to keep an eye on it, because you've got something developing out there to our west. We do have an area of high pressure protecting us. There will be showers around on Tuesday. They might be heavy here and there as well, just sort of isolated ones bubbling up during the day. But we'll be monitoring this one next week as more unsettled weather carries on. We do expect for the rest of September plenty more cold fronts coming through and changing the weather pattern around New Zealand. It is spring after all, and like I said yesterday, usually between now and the middle of October is some of our most unsettled weather of the year as we transition slowly out of winter and slowly get hints of summer. That's all from me for today. I'll see you again tomorrow, Thursday, with our next New Zealand weather update.